JAG University here with Liz Godinez. One thing I want to talk about, and really one of the things that you've written as an agent, so get your perspective, and it's really one of the hardest things to write currently, is anything involved in the cannabis business.
Yes.
Right? The
yes.
cannabis industry itself, which is an evolving, we consider an evolving market.
Correct.
And so many times it's very difficult to get the insurance in place, the correct insurance in place for these companies who are growing. Can you break it down why it's so difficult?
Well, with the cannabis industry, there's a bunch of different products that they can sell. You have CBD, you have hemp, you have the actual THC, which is, the one that is more controversial. CBD's kind of been approved already, and so has hemp. You can find it at gas stations, etc. There's medical marijuana use, and then there is legal recreational use. So some states they're legalized, across the board for recreational, for medical. Florida is still just medical. So there's a few states that you have legalization across the board, and some that are still pretty conservative in that aspect. So it's kind of difficult because businesses aren't getting loans from banks to be able to operate their business. So most of this industry is always cash flow.
Sure.
So it's hard to get any banks. They're not giving out loans since it's not federally legal yet.
Not yet, but hopefully
Right.
the Safe Banking Act, right, is going to change that.
So there are some carriers that, that are willing to write this type of business. There's not many. We have pretty much all the carriers that do write. So that's where it's a little bit tricky since it's not federally legal. How are they going to get funds? How are they going to be able to operate? You can't go to a bank and take a loan out because you're in the cannabis industry. So.
Right. Well, which is interesting too, but so to kind of circle back on that specifically, right? Insurance is state regulated.
Correct.
Right. There are some carriers who are maybe filed in all 50 states.
Correct.
Some in a few states.
All states are different.
But looking at it, so if it's states, it's okay as far as the state laws are different compared to the federal laws. So you kind of have this area that's difficult for insurance companies. It's a really deterrent, right? For them to get kind of in that space. And I think that's where the lack of capacity comes in too.
Correct.
When I say capacity, it means who wants to get into the space, right? Look at it. It is controversial. And insurance companies historically are very conservative and very reactive. But that being said, just hearing the word cannabis, it's an automatic what?
It's a big no.
It's an automatic declination, right? But I think with stuff happening, there is bills trying to be passed, and it is actually bipartisan, right? This is something that's not if, I think when it's going to happen.
Right.
I mean,
it's a matter of time.
The more the federal government can do to help kind of ease, right? Make sure the law is a little more clear instead of just being from a state level to a federal level. It's going to help open up a lot of things.
Correct.
Because I think a lot of things too, even when you talked about not being able to get loans and look at the actual exposure. I mean, most of these cannabis companies, anybody in that space, they're probably underinsured right now.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, more because they just can't find the adequate coverage, right? They might have $20 million worth of inventory they need to insure. They can probably only get, $5 million? I mean, and that being from a cash flow business, it's going to be super expensive, and then not being actively insured, which I think is the biggest issue as well.
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of coverages that, it's just like any other business, right? So you have your workers' comp, you have your professional, your general liability. We can also insure stock coverage once it's dry stock, cargo. You're transporting with commercial auto.
Are you crossing state lines?
You can cross state lines in some cases.
I know you have a client in California.
I do.
We had an issue, right?
Yeah, I have a great client in California actually, and that's how I started with this industry, with this type of insurance. I've learned a lot from them. I've just seen their growth in the last 3 years. It's probably tripled, I would say. So, and it's one of my most profitable clients as far as their revenues. They're up there. So we're going to see a lot more players in this industry. The ones that are in there now have been around for a long time, have money, have capital to do this. Have backing. So the ones that have come in after have pretty much died out. So the ones that are there now and the big ones, they're going to be there for a while.
Now, you looking at in that space in general, is there any sort of do's and don'ts? What would be kind of the one advice you would give anybody in that space to make sure they're insured adequately about?
If you're going to try to do it all, make sure you are doing, specific, pretty much departments or payroll from that department, because you don't want to mix cultivation with extraction, right? You want to have to kind of keep that separate. Just like you don't want to have your employees that are clerical within the space that you're doing the extraction. because that's going to be an issue towards the workers' comp too.
As far as the classification
With classification,
goes, right?
yeah.
And-
You got to
and-
make sure you have separate offices. Everything's pretty clear cut because the rates are pretty aggressive for the cultivator and the extraction.
Well, I think
codes.
that's that one scenario
Yeah.
too, where number one, it's an evolving market.
Correct.
The classes are, and the few companies who are in it, they're going to charge you for it.
Right.
So they're looking out. But yeah, that's a good tip too about separating it.
And it's not so much just cultivator and extractions. You have now dispensaries all over. You have smoke shops. You have the actual people that manufacture the pens, those cartridges. You have the edibles. I mean, there's a lot. And it's just like any other like pharmaceutical like medicine too,
There's so many different levels and different types of exposure. And I think back to we talk about being insured correctly and the professional liability itself. It's good that you understand this. You've been doing this now for 4 years, right? When your first account out on the West Coast, and it kind of like now you understand it. You're able to kind of give that guidance about how to be insured.
Correct.
Not just you, but like anything, everybody along this chain needs to have a certificate of insurance, be additional insured.
Right.
I mean, it's not. It's just not a way to cut corners, but it's good to have the peace of mind to be insured correctly.
So if anybody out there is in the industry and has no idea where to get insurance, how to start, what they need, let us know. Let me know.
Call Liz.
That's it.